when those first studies were performed years and years ago, nobody knew about the importance of the microbiome, the role of the microbiome and the immune system, and even less the role of the microbiota inside our brains, that is, the microbes that are normally resident inside our brains, whose influence on brain function is nothing but immense. And you may think, well, who cares about the microbes? The less microbes we have, the better it is. Well, we know by now that this is not absolutely the case, because microbes are truly essential for the development and function of all our organs and systems. Our immune system is based on the microbes we have in our gut. And our brain also has microbes that influence its function.
In tests, it's been found things like mold. If you grow mold inside a Faraday cage, it'll grow one way, and then even if the electromagnetic fields are around, take the Faraday cage away and some sort of 600 biotoxins are developed within the mold because of the effects of the EMFs upon it. Electromagnetic fields, even of weak quality, have an effect upon our microbiome, which is really essential to our whole being.
You have to consider that DNA also works as a fractal antenna, which is able to send and receive and also to process signals under the form of radio frequencies. Well, then there is no doubt that artificial radio frequencies, such as those of cell towers, and in particular these new types of towers that have a much higher density of signals, they may somehow interfere with the ability of DNA to retain and transmit biological signals. So this is one level of danger that very few biologists are aware of.
All smartphones come with some information that basically says, don't keep the phone in your pocket or you will exceed the as-tested exposure guidelines. And this is a modeled microwave radiation dose of a 6-year-old with greater levels to the frontal and temporal lobes, eyes and cheek. And watch this here. Now, yellow, white, and red are the hottest, all right? And if you look carefully, you will see it's going into the eye, the nose. Do it again, just so you'll get to see it. And partly into the brainstem. Now, that's just showing you that there's going to be some exposure into that area of a young head. It doesn't tell you that there's any biological effect, right? Now, the next slide is going to show you something that might be of interest to students and faculty here. And that has to do with exposure to the reproductive organs. We call them the gonads, I think you say the testicles, and bone marrow. And look here at the radiation as it gets into the groin area. And that's just from having a mobile phone modeled into the pocket. And this, again, is based on normalized SAR with I think we had a dipole antenna.
The way a mobile phone works is by sending and receiving microwave frequencies to and from the base station. So having a phone pressed against your head inevitably means your brain is being exposed to those waves. Does the brain react to this exposure? A recent American study shows it absolutely does. The work was carried out by Dr. Nora Valko. Dr. Valko and her team studied 47 healthy people for an entire year. Participants had a cell phone placed on their left and right ears. One was activated but muted, the other was turned off. Dr. Valko used brain imaging equipment to study how much glucose the brain would use during exposure.
It's a very sensitive marker to indicate if there are changes in brain activity that may be driven by a given stimulus, which in this case was the cell phone.
When the brain is stimulated, it consumes glucose in the same way a car consumes fuel.
15-minute exposure to a cell phone was associated with increases in glucose consumption by the brain, which indicates that the brain was being activated by the radio frequencies from the cell phone. This right area of the brain that was very close to the antenna showed the largest increases in metabolism as compared when the telephones were off. Even though the radio frequencies that are emitted from current cell phone technologies are very weak, they are able to activate the human brain to have an effect.
By using a muted cell phone, Dr. Valco's experiments showed that the human brain has a metabolic reaction to the presence of microwaves from a mobile phone. A metabolic reaction at levels well below the legal limit. Something many people claimed was impossible. And the reaction recorded by the doctor is secondary to an even greater concern: the way that those microwaves are actually absorbed by the brain. This has become known as SAR.
SAR is, well, first of all, it stands for specific absorption rate, and that's the measure of how much radio waves, or how much RF energy, in this case radio waves, is absorbed into the human body over a certain period of time within a certain volume. So it's a measure of the heating effect that a radio transmitter would have on your body, on the human body.
The SAR for every mobile phone is measured in this way, using an artificial head called a SAM phantom. This is filled with a glucose mixture which represents the brain. The probe measures the amount of microwave radiation that penetrates the SAM phantom skull and calculates a SAR rating based on how much energy is absorbed.
For the European Union, the limit is 2 watts per kilogram over a 10-gram average of tissue. For America, it's 1.6 watts per kilogram over a 1-gram average of tissue. So the limit for the USA is more stringent than for the European Union, but other countries around the world, such as Australia and New Zealand, use the European limit.
Some of the most popular phones on the market emit so much microwave radiation that their SAR rating is right on the edge of the limit. Every millimetre of skull helps protect the brain against the phone's microwave radiation, and therefore lowers the phone's SAR rating. Children get their first phone at the average age of 8 years old. An 8-year-old skull is considerably thinner than that of an adult, so you would hope that phones are tested against a skull which represents the thickness of that of a child.
The SAM head is an average shaped and sized human skull. The average of 10,000 people has been taken in terms of their head measurements, and this SAM phantom head has been created, which is an average human skull.
Obviously, the head of an average human being is considerably larger than that of an 8-year-old child. But when we investigate the company that makes the SAM phantom head, we discover that the news is even worse. The SAM phantom isn't just the average of 10,000 people. It's the average of 10,000 US Army personnel. And US Army personnel most certainly have a larger, bigger, thicker head than the average 8-year-old. It's pretty reasonable to assume that if most mobile phones were tested against the skull of an 8-year-old, they would fail.
Share with you how we've done it. We first start out with the MRI and create the model with 1 millimeter voxels. And this is quite a bit of work goes into creating this. And here is what it looks like after a period of 6 minutes. And that's really not as bad as it might look, because you see the red area only gets partway through the eye of the adult, right? The one that we're really concerned about is this one with the young child. And this is a 3-year-old brain that we modeled. And you see that by the end of that 6-minute call, the peak radiation, yellow and red, is getting all the way into almost both eyes. And again, this is one call, and it's not going to kill anybody. It may not cause any biological effect whatsoever for one call or 2 calls or 3 calls. But the question is, what's the cumulative impact of this kind of exposure?
Years ago, the brain of a child absorbs twice as much radiation as an adult. That's a stunning fact. Few people are aware of it.
Now, here's some of the other policies that have been developed. In France, there's a ban on advertising to young children, under age 12, by the way. All cell phones have to be sold with earpieces. There has to be labeling of the specific absorption rate on phones. And there's got to be warnings. In India, they've lowered their tower limits to 1/10 that of the international standards. And they have official guidelines for cell phone use, using headsets and speakerphones. The Supreme Court in India has actually ordered a number of towers to be torn down. But it's a very tough battle to have to fight. Rather than having to get a tower torn down, there ought to be siting rules and policies that make sense. And in many countries, there are no real sensible siting policies. Israel, which is a country that has a lot of important issues to deal with right now, has a National Institute on non-ionizing radiation. They say no Wi-Fi in kindergarten. They prefer wired over wireless in schools. All phones, again, are to come with headsets and safety. And no advertising with children. In Belgium, the law has been implemented as of 2014. It was passed in 2013. No phones are to be designed or sold for children under the age of 7. Again, all handsets must be sold with headsets. And the sale to young children is specifically prohibited. Canada has issued practical advice as well. And I don't go into any more details here. These slides will become available on the website for the university, and we have much more detailed information I can share with you from our website as well. The Canadian Parliamentary Health Committee has urged that there be a recognition that this is a, quote, serious public health issue. And we agree.